Hi guys, welcome to the second video in this course on migration, digital media and globalization. With much pleasure, I've been reading your papers and you've really managed to profoundly grasp Jan's paper and carved out the sort of place you take with your own research in that move in sociolinguistics from globalization to issues of complexity in our daily lives. And I'm actually quite baffled by the kind of intricate research project that you're all engaged in. And if next year perhaps I can come to Luxembourg, I'd be looking forward to be working with some of you if at all possible. Um, I'll briefly start this video intervention with the paper that you guys were supposed to read for this week, which is a paper of myself that I co-wrote with Jan Blommaert, the author of last week, and next week we'll read something that is written by Dr. Juffermans, who will also be technically and content-wise assisting us in the live video conference on the 11th of December, if I'm correct. Yes, the 11th of December from 2 something onwards in the afternoon. First of all, I want to start with a vignette. I think you all know this one. Not sure if it's legal in Luxembourg, but this is one of these more advanced e-cigarettes, electronic cigarettes, and it's really sort of an example of what one would call capitalist globalization. Patented in China originally, then developed in Poland, manufactured in Malaysia, and sold in Holland and Belgium. I'm not sure if this is good for the workers involved in that whole mechanism. But a lot of people are involved in this process, and a lot of people are involved in making these kinds of things work. Now, when I start my paper that I wrote together with Jan, you can see that in the introduction, I try to come back to some of the issues that we already discussed last week. And one of the key concepts in that introduction is what Castells in 1996 called the network society. It is nowadays possible to sort of lay your beat in Belgium, send it over the internet to Jamaica, have a reggae artist get a version on it and play the bass in Germany, and then put that all together and sort of put that online and put that out as a record and so on. Right? But it is also these are the more pleasurable sides of that kind of complexity, of that kind of super diversity, of that kind of technologizing of technology. But of course, in a couple of other sectors, in civil and civic society, there are main issues and problems that are connected to super diversity, especially in social key areas such as healthcare, social work, education, union work, and so on. And we're dealing not just with the benefits of workers under capitalism that can actually produce these fantastic things. Let me take one more sip. But also, of course, we have to take care, which is only normal, of the workers' families, of their children, and so on. So under super diversity, as we said last week, under forced but also under legal migration, people come in contact with a lot of social services, need a lot of social services, and so on. But all these things have become a challenge for societies, and these issues and problems come to the forefront in studying super diversity. A lot of you guys have really been keen on taking up the issue of methodology. For example, I think it's Jordana Martin or Martin Jordana, who says that one of the most interesting methodological steps is that we're trying to give voice to the people who already migrated, or also to those who are aspiring to migrate, that we want to tell the story of their lives. And I think this is very important. We cannot just suffice by sketching the evolution within the institutions themselves and the kinds of policies that they have invented and adapted in order to take care of migrants' issues and problems, but also to bring into the picture the complex lives and trajectories that migrants themselves are engaged in, starting in a particular place in the world, coming to a particular place like ours, for example, and going to a next place. And as I think I said last week, um, we can no longer sort of collect the kind of static information that these institutions used to collect on particular groups of people. Like, for example, we can no longer collect static information on Roma or Somali families and then use that in order to find a problem for particular linguistic problems of children or to find a problem for delinquent youth and so on. We need to constantly take into account all these complex factors that are brought in by the migrants themselves, being a result of their more complex migration trajectories. My wife's wondering what I'm doing at this time of night in my bedroom. By the way, you've all seen my house now, my little apartment. Last week we were in the living room, now we're in the bedroom, and so on. But anyway, so these kinds of migrants bring with them all kinds of complexities that we need to take into account in finding a more tailor-made solution for particular issues and problems, be it problems with language, be it problems with what is so-called integration, be it problems with education and so on. But beyond these problems, there's also a particular richness that people bring with them. For example, last week I was talking to an African guy from the Congo who basically speaks 7 languages. Speaks 4 African languages, speaks French, English, and some German. So, but when he goes to the temporary job agency, and saying to them, "Oh, I speak all these languages." Yeah, yeah, but do you also speak Dutch, right? So immediately, the richness of someone's sociolinguistic repertoire, as it were, is discarded in favor of one particular resource that the person at the time is not mastering. So part of that issue of language misrecognition, part of that issue of super diverse responses to reality are basically not very sufficient. People do not know Dutch when they come here, but they do know a lot of other languages. And I can imagine that for particular companies, it's quite interesting to have someone speak a particular Congolese language in order to send maybe these things to particular places in Africa and so on. But I'm just saying, part of super diversity brings with it a lot of issues and problems that social institutions need to take care of, and to which they are clearly not enough adapted or not adapted enough. But on the other hand, it also brings with it a lot of richness to which the say institutions, education, and so on are not really adapted to either, because they're not sure what to do with these particular types of language richness. There are, of course, within the unadapted frame, particular persons that do find the way to sort of use that richness. Like, for example, in one of my MA students a couple of years ago did a field work in a sort of transition class. I'm not sure if you have those in Luxembourg, but it's in Holland, something that eases children into the first year of regular primary education or the first year of regular secondary education, and it basically focuses on the acquisition of Dutch. And there were two Somali children, and the teacher, one of them spoke Somali and Dutch, and the second one only spoke Somali. So what the teacher did is having the girl that spoke both Somali and Dutch translate in front of the other children, the Somali girl, and so on, in particular types of poetry activity and so on. So it was quite interesting that she used the richness of the girls themselves in order to sort of expose to the class the language richness of those children. So in all, to resume a bit that point, is that under super diversity, migrants bring particular skills to the table. With that, of course, comes a range of social issues and problems as well, and with that, of course, comes a range of language, social and cultural richness, neither of which we're able to take care of in case of the problems or appreciate in case of the richness. I'm trying to paint a picture here that may be a bit grim, but I'm sure that all of our research will, of course, positively try to bring that on the to the attention of the people who should be taking care of this. Now, as I just mentioned, methodology and the paper or the position paper by Jordana Martin is that he or she is focusing there methodologically on voice and on the kinds of stories that people tell. And I think that is very important because that gives us a particular concrete view of the kinds of complexities that come with migration, that come with people's trajectories. And methodologically speaking, one of the methodological propositions that Jan and I make in that paper is to kind of think of ethnographic monitoring, which is basically launched by Del Heims, in which we closely work together with the kinds of institutions that are having to deal with the richness and the issues and problems of superdiversity. So we suggest that we follow the ethnographic monitoring concept by Del Heims using his 4 steps. So it's a kind of 4-step methodology in which we first consult the social actors that are concerned with superdiversity. So that means both caretakers, employers, but also migrants themselves, to identify what issues concern them most, so that we find out about, so to say, the other's position. And then a second step, to observe the kind of behavior relevant to that issue in a series of contexts in and out of the situation that we study. And then in a third step, share our findings back with the people that we work with, and finally sort of taking stock of that whole process. And in this week's position paper, I'd like to invite you to think through these 4 steps for your own projects. And if you have not really done a project this term or this semester, or if you're only planning to do a project, think about those 4 steps of ethnographic monitoring as they are described in the article, I think on pages 1 and 2 or 2 and 3, something like that, to think them through and sort of imagine that if you were to follow those steps, how and what your project would look like. For example, Nehir Güller said in her paper in relation to her project on online citizen journalism through social media in Turkey, one would already become very interested in how, for example, ethnographic monitoring, feeding back knowledge into particular communities that we study under superdiversity, how that would work in such a case. So I'm quite interested to see the result of this week's paper. Let's say that we agree to write the paper by next week, Monday sometime. All right, guys, have a nice week ahead. Ciao.